Josh McConkey is one of them. He's an emergency physician, an Air Force Reserve commander, and a combat veteran who served with special operations teams in Iraq and beyond. He's also a husband, a father, and the founder of the Weight Behind the Spear Foundation, a movement built around the idea that teachers, coaches, mentors, and everyday people are the force that make great leadership possible. In our conversation, Dr. McConkey opens up about the realities of emergency medicine, the pressure, the privilege, and the toll. He shares how combat shaped his view of service, why leadership begins with community, and what it really means to live with purpose in a generation facing both a mental health crisis and a crisis of meaning. This is a conversation about resilience, humility, and remembering why you started. This is Shadow Me Next with Dr. Josh McConkey.
Dr. McConkey, thank you so much for joining us on Shadow Me Next today. You have a wealth of information that you are going to share with us because you've had a wealth of experience across the board. So thanks for being here and thanks for being willing.
Thank you very much. It's been a wild 20 some years, I tell you.
I bet. How would you, when you are describing yourself in front of a group of people, perhaps even just medical people, what titles do you use? How do you fit yourself into a box?
You know, some of the unique experience I've had overseas, like in Australia and New Zealand, they don't really use the titles, right? Everyone's on a
Interesting.
first name basis. And especially in the emergency department, what I've found is, when you start to get those hierarchies, there's very good studies. I know in aviation, I'm an Air Force flight surgeon as well. In aviation, there's lots of studies that show increased error rates and things, the higher that the hierarchy gets. But, physician, military commander, Pulitzer Prize nominated author. I've got all kinds of crazy titles. But for me, the most important ones are, father, husband. Those are probably the most important to me.
I think that's fantastic. I think that's a really good reminder for all of us that just because we have a title or just because we've done some things doesn't necessarily make us an expert, doesn't necessarily make us the person that we want to go to. But in your case, it absolutely does. I am so impressed by what you've done and not just what you've accomplished, but what you are passing on to future generations, to specifically young people, things that we absolutely desperately need to be developing. So thanks for doing that. Let's talk about a day in your life as an ER physician. I think that would be a fantastic place to start to really get a good idea of what your life, at least in emergency medicine, looks like as an ER doc, and some of the challenges perhaps that you might have experienced and your successes, the wins that you found.
Yeah, so emergency medicine is a very unique specialty in that there's a lot to know. You can't possibly know everything, of course, but you're a jack of all trades. You've got ENT and cardiothoracic surgery and a little internal medicine, family medicine, OB. It's just anything could walk through the door. You have no control over it. And I'm an adrenaline junkie. I always have been. I'm a military physician. I've served with combat search and rescue, special operations, aerospace medicine in the Air Force and the Army. I flew medevac in Iraq. So I like to stay busy. I like to kind of be on that edge a little bit and get that, the adrenaline rush isn't as good as it used to be, right? Once you've been in combat and been shot at and all kinds of crazy things, like the ER is pretty low key. But yeah, anything could walk through the door, which is very, very challenging. You have to think quickly on your feet. You have to thrive under pressure. So when you have those code situations and the true emergencies, I mean, I wish there was more of that. But really, it's the bread and butter: coughs, colds, urinary tract infections, a lot of primary care, in the emergency department, a lot of social health and mental health issues, ton of that. So sometimes more than I would like, but you really have to be ready for anything at all times. So that's very challenging to really stay focused because you're pulled in 20 different directions. As corporate medicine gets more involved, with emergency departments and hospitals in general, you tend to see some understaffing and you're really task saturated more than is safe a lot of times. So probably the biggest challenge is just balancing your own personal health and patient safety with, the business side of medicine and what administrators and some of these hospital administrators are asking you to do. So that definitely is a challenge. The big wins is I've saved a lot of lives. And when you see a true emergency and you step in and you do what needs to be done. It's never just me. You see some of these physicians with a God complex. It's insane. God is working through my hands, right? I study
Mhm.
my tail off. I work my tail off. I put myself in situations where I can be successful, and the Lord's going to use me as He needs to. And I can't save everybody, so that's always difficult when you see people die. And you want to save everyone, but that's just not reality. But the big wins when you save a life, that feels pretty amazing, and you get to walk into that family and just let them know everything's going to be okay and put them at ease. That's it's pretty special.
Absolutely. You've touched on a couple of things that I would really like to develop a little bit more. You described what a person might need to find success in the ER as a clinician, right? Have you experienced a situation where somebody was in the ER as a clinician and realized unfortunately, they just don't have what it takes? What does that I'm sure that happens, right? And we've never really
All
talked
the
about this.
time.
Yes. Okay.
All the
So
time.
break that down for us. What does that look like? How do you have you ever had to go in and step in and counsel this person and say, maybe, let's consider something different?
Yeah, so I've been a professor at Duke University,
Mhm.
taught in the emergency medicine program. I've taught overseas in several programs in Australia and New Zealand. And you've got a wide range of students, medical students, physician assistant students, from all different walks of life. And then we have residents from all the different specialties that rotate through the emergency department as well. And,
Yes.
there's lots of bright individuals, but a lot of times that doesn't mean that you are clinically, skilled as well. So I've met several physicians. I remember one code in general where I was actually teaching in Chicago for was it a National Youth Leadership Forum.
Mm.
I was a second year medical student. I was in the emergency department at University of Chicago. So I'm giving a bunch of high school kids that want to go into medicine some tours. And there was a code being run and there was a Harvard graduate. All right, big
Ooh.
fancy Harvard, ooh, super smarty. And I just watched them fumble, missed an airway. We were doing chest compressions on the stomach, and it was it was kind of one of those surreal moments where I just looked at the attending. I had like a suit coat on, took off my suit jacket, and just kind of gave him a nod and jumped in, started doing chest compressions. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's just hilarious. I mean, I just thrive in those situations. Some
Right.
people can handle pressure and crazy codes, and some people can't. That's all right. There's
Mhm.
tremendous physicians that are dermatologists and immunologists,
Yeah.
and good for you. Like I would be bored out of my mind. But some
Exactly.
people, some people just can't handle those code situations. I found when things get crazy, when it's super stressful, I'm just smarter. That's when
Mhm.
my mind clicks. That's when things work for me. I get bored very easy. So I've always enjoyed the chaos in the emergency department.
This is a great segue into a question that actually I'm laughing because it's a question I was going to ask, and now I know the answer. You won the North Carolina lottery, right? And
Yes.
many people would have retired or just celebrated and sat back and enjoyed their little Mai Tais on the beach. But now I know the answer to why you didn't do that, right? You would have just
Yeah.
gone
No,
crazy.
there's so much more you can do. I've actually used that money. It's helped me get the messaging out for my book. I
Mhm.
started a nonprofit organization raising money for Western North Carolina and promoting community engagement. I just once you've served in combat, and I've carried body bags of American heroes, and you see people that have sacrificed everything, I wake up every single day. That's what I think about. I'm very
Mhm.
blessed. I'm very fortunate. I've got a wife and three kids, and I just wake up motivated every single day. I have to make this world a better place. I have to make their sacrifice worth it. And so those are the things that motivate me.
It's absolutely incredible. And thank you so much for doing that. You mentioned your platform, you mentioned your foundation in your book, Be the Weight Behind the Spear. This is also your leadership philosophy. It's so powerful. Tell us a little bit about what this phrase means to you.
So that personal leadership ethos, I've been very fortunate. I've worked with special operations. So I was medical director for PJs, Combat
Mm.
Search and Rescue. And these individuals are amazing. Like jumping out of helicopters, taking down bin Laden, rescuing the children of the Thai caves in 2018. If you
Yes,
remember a
yes.
few years back, that soccer team
Mhm.
that was trapped. Crazy stories from the team. I mean, just unbelievable stories. They all have someone in their life that gave them the amazing confidence to do what they do. So
Mhm.
teachers, coaches, volunteers, like family and mentors. Like that's what makes them so special. That's what sets America apart. You know, that's the weight behind that tip of the spear. And so the book and the ethos is just getting people involved. You know, that's my call to action to get into your community, go coach, volunteer, you know, volunteer in medical schools and or churches or schools or go to the animal shelters, right? Those animals can be emotional support animals for somebody. So
Right.
everybody has something to give. And I think a lot of people discount their role in our society,
Mhm.
but you know, they have tremendous skills. Like everyone has a different set of skills. So use your skills and get out there and just pay it forward to the next generation because they really need the help.
Absolutely. And I think it's a wonderful, and I'm sure you have stories where perhaps you met somebody who was either was struggling in some way, shape, or form, whether it was mental health or maybe it was just confidence, and you saw leadership capabilities in them, but they just needed that push. And I think sometimes that push is actually them diving into these situations where they give back
Yeah.
first, right?
And for you know a lot out there, I know a lot of students and people wanting to look into health professions are familiar with The Pit, that TV show.
Yes, yes.
You know, I haven't got to watch it myself, but I did see a bunch of articles when it was nominated and won several Emmy Awards. And
Mhm.
they showed some clips from an episode where Noah Wiley just kind of had this just breakdown and talking just because we see horrible things all the time, just
Mhm.
death and destruction and people at their worst. And there was actually one of the characters on the show was having suicidal thoughts
Mhm.
and he kind of casually made some comments to like don't do it on my shift, man, like come on. Like like, it kind of tried to make light of it but really pulled them
Yeah.
back into the fold. And man, there's a lot of mental health issues in healthcare in general. There's higher rates of depression and suicide. They tell you that when you start school. and
Yeah.
and you do see that with colleagues. I know I've lost some friends from high school and college to suicide. I don't know if any of my medical school classmates yet.
Mm.
Hopefully not, my goodness.
Yeah.
But those are things that everyone has a breaking point. And really, if you're looking at some good take-home messages, so working with special operations, these people are the toughest mentally and physically, I mean, on planet Earth, and they still have suicides in that population.
Wow.
So everybody has a breaking point.
Mhm.
Bad things happen, life happens, and don't be afraid to reach out to friends and colleagues or mental health practitioners. Like the emergency department is always wide open for you. And
Yeah.
I've seen physicians and healthcare people come to the emergency department, and I sit down with them, and I sit down, cry with them, like, hey,
Mhm.
it's okay, man. Like you came to the right place. We're always here for you. We can always get you mental health. So, I'm really proud of being that safety net for America.
Absolutely. And I think it brings up an interesting point. I was just speaking with a patient about this yesterday. Medicine has become very specialized, right? It's not the once upon a time GP, family GP, where you and your mom and her mom and your baby all went and you got all of the care that you need. We're very, very specialized. And yet we still are capable of and enjoy talking about a wide variety of these health concerns. Weight management is one, right? Either
Oh yeah.
obesity, being underweight, relationship with food, anything to do with mental health, right? We all need to be able to and willing to have these conversations with people. I think that's what medicine's all about, right? Not just to
Yeah,
be,
yeah.
not just well, it's mental health. I mean, could you imagine being in the ER? Oh, it's mental health. It's not really my thing. So
Well,
let me
and
let me
don't be
send you a
afraid to talk
specialist.
about it,
No,
because people are like, oh, well, if I bring it up, now they're going to think about it. Like, no, I promise. They were already thinking about it. Okay. Like you have to talk about it and get it out there because like
right.
just it's the taboo or, oh
Mhm.
man, we shouldn't talk about that. No, it's completely incorrect.
you know, the, they're hard conversations, but you are used to having hard conversations. I mean, speaking to young people generally, period, is difficult these days, but especially speaking to young people about leadership and about mental health. Here's a question for you. In a world where social media often rewards popularity over principle, how can young people build just authentic integrity? How can they just be so true to themselves?
So critically important. So
Mhm.
my episode on Teen Kids News on mental health and the
I
COVID
loved that
generation
one. Yes.
just aired. So it just came out. So if you go on YouTube, just Google Teen Kid News. I think it's episode 2304, or you just probably Google my name with it. It'll pop up. It's a great episode. but you have to get out there and get engaged in person. So, social media, it's a blessing and a curse. I know it's part of everyday life now, but we are still social creatures. Like
Hmm.
human beings have been social creatures for thousands and thousands of years. It didn't just magically stop because of COVID and YouTube videos and TikTok. Okay. So you have to get involved, like face to face. And the best way you can do that is get out in your community. I say volunteer,
Yep.
coach, teach, just get out there and coach a T-ball team. I mean, it's crazy. They just run around and throw dirt at each other.
They're
It's
wild.
fun. The more you get involved or go to those animal shelters,
Hmm.
there's so many community organizations that need your help. I mean, the local soup kitchens, and there's lots of faith-based organizations. During Christmas, this time of year,
Yes.
Samaritan's Purse does a wonderful a volunteer activity where everyone they have these shoe boxes they just fill up with all kinds of great things for kids and send them all over the world. There's so many things that you can do to help contribute, try to make the world a better place. That is helping your mental health as well because you're engaged, you're part of something that matters. It's you're not just sitting there watching the video screen all day.
Exactly. Dr. McConkey, I'm imagining these, specifically these high school and college students hearing us talk about, get involved and make sure that you're studying hard. And what would you tell them if they said, but Ashley, but Dr. McConkey, I don't have time. I don't have time to
I
do all of
know.
this. Where do I make time? I mean, you are the
So
perfect person to speak to
yeah,
making time.
this is what makes that's what sets you apart.
Yes.
Because guess what? Everybody applying to professional school, PA, medicine, nursing, everyone's got pretty good grades. Okay, you don't see the flunkies applying to make it into school. You have to set yourself apart somehow. So you put those things on your CV, you get out there, you volunteer, you're part of this organization, you coached a youth soccer team. That gives you amazing things to talk about in your interview.
Mhm.
Because, okay, there's a gate, all right? Everybody that makes it through the gate, everybody that gets an interview, guess what? You're on the same level playing field now. Like, oh, this person had straight A's 4.0. Well, okay, whatever, great. Just because they're super bright doesn't mean anything. So you have to, once you get that interview, what makes you different? What sets you apart? What makes you unique? If you can talk about those types of things, your church, the teams that you've coached, or you've volunteered in some health organizations, there's so many things that you can use to set you apart. That's going to stand out in an interview. They're going to recognize, they're going to see those leadership skills because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the future of your profession.
Mhm.
Who's going to be a leader? Who's going to make a difference? And your grades may not be all straight A's, but they see what you bring to the table on the leadership and the volunteer side of things. That makes a huge difference. That is going to set you apart. So, those things matter just as much as the grades.
You're absolutely right. And Dr. McConkey, I would love to hear you speak to this because I think you could really paint us a picture. We tell these students these things. We say, develop resilience by volunteering and by putting yourself in uncomfortable positions. Hone in those leadership skills. Does that does it actually work? Have you seen it actually drive these students to success in their careers?
Yeah, 100%. And the people that push themselves to just, you can't be afraid of failure, right?
Mhm.
So get out there. I mean, maybe join a theater group, right? I mean, do something crazy. I mean, just those things that put you in a very uncomfortable zone. I
Mhm.
did West Side Story in high school, and that was exhausting. I mean, I was a wrestler. I played baseball, and the craziest thing I did was it was West Side Story, and it was fantastic. I learned a lot about myself. I generally did not enjoy like performing in front of people or public speaking, any of those things. And those types of things, getting you out of your comfort zone, make you a better person. It's going to make you a better physician or physician assistant or whatever
Mhm.
healthcare profession you go into because you're going to be put in some very, very uncomfortable situations. I've seen some crazy mental health issues or like family members that just go absolutely berserk when they get bad news. I mean, just
Oh.
there's things you just can't anticipate. And the more comfortable you get with being uncomfortable, you're gonna just you're gonna stay cool, as cool as the other side of the pillow, right? You're gonna take care of what needs to take care of. You're gonna be a professional and it's just experience as much as you can. Travel, like healthcare around the world is very, very different. I worked in Australia, New Zealand. I have an Irish medical license as well. I haven't worked there yet,
What?
but when I retire, I hope to chill out in Europe for a little bit. But just all of those different unique things. Medicine is medicine, right? It's all the same textbooks and the science, but the healthcare is very different because the resources are different. I've been to Rwanda, like Central Africa, and they
Wow.
have fantastic physicians, but just not a lot of resources.
Hmm.
So, things are different. So just, get out there, travel, volunteer. There's lots of things you can do.
It's so interesting. And you never know, we all had hopes of going to medicine when we were going into medicine when we were younger, but you never know where that's going to lead you. And it's so funny now that you mentioned
No idea.
performing in West Side Story and putting yourself in these positions that are uncomfortable. You are running to be Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. And I mean, would you
Yes,
have ever
ma'am.
considered doing that back when you were trying to develop some resilience as, a high
Oh,
school student, maybe?
well, never in a million years. And just what I've seen in 22, 23 years in
Mhm.
healthcare and the military and just you have to realize that most of these politicians know absolutely nothing about healthcare. And so we need more leadership and healthcare leaders in politics. The decisions that you see made, wow, if they even had the basic understanding, they probably would have made some different decisions. So, just having some purpose driven leadership, or we're going to start right here in North Carolina.
How can we support our healthcare professionals who are looking at a role in politics?
You know, Physicians in general. So what I learned, I ran a congressional race a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
Physicians live in a bubble. Healthcare providers live in a bubble. They're very, very smart. They love medicine and they just do that. But what they don't realize is everyone around them, like your politicians, and because a lot of them are attorneys, right? And we all love attorneys in healthcare, right? So, with all these decisions and the policy is being made by people that don't know what they're doing, you have to get involved politically because it affects your patients, it affects their access to care. Right here in North Carolina, they've passed a bill, HB 67. And so, a lot of physicians aren't even aware of it. But what they did is they basically removed the USMLE requirement and residency requirements for rural physicians. Anybody from overseas, foreign physicians can go practice in rural North Carolina. They don't even have to pass the USMLE now, which is
Mm.
crazy. So, what you've really told rural healthcare providers, rural healthcare, your rural patients is,
Mhm.
your physicians don't have to be quite as qualified. Like
Right.
we know it's hard. So, and we won't get into the whole politics of it, but just at the end of the day, it was a bad decision. And I think if we had some more healthcare providers in politics, we probably could have come up with some different ideas there, like what we've done in Nebraska. There's a rural health opportunities program for, people from rural areas are more likely to go back to rural areas to practice. So you give them slots in medical schools. It was called RHOP, Rural Health Opportunities Program. I was a part of that program. And I still work in rural Nebraska. I fly out there and work about every month or every other month just to help out. So, there's we need more providers in healthcare. So like for me, if you guys go to strongernc.com, you can learn about kind of me and my platform. And I would love to have you on the team. I need the help.
Absolutely. StrongerNC.com. I'll tag that in the show notes below. Before
Thank
I
you.
get to our final question, Dr. McConkey, this is something on the show called Quality Questions. And it's where you and I talk about an interview question that either you've heard or you've asked in the past that has been memorable for one reason or the other. It's to help these
Oh,
pre-health students really develop a cache of interview questions to prepare for. Do you have a quality question for us?
yes. So this question I was asked in Kalamazoo, Michigan for residency. And I'll never forget it because it was the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So they sat down and you can kind of get the feel for a program because you're going to meet the other residents when they're doing interviews. They sat down and always be prepared for bizarre questions. They just kind of
Mhm.
see how you react. So they asked, if you could be an animal, what animal would you be? And this is after you've already done like 8 or 9 interviews. You've been asked a million questions. It was just so utterly ridiculous. I was like, a shark. Like, why do
Oh,
you
I
want to be a
like
shark?
it.
Oh my gosh. I love sharks growing up. Okay. Like I read all the books, Jaws, like
Yes.
Shark Week is fantastic, but just, so you just be prepared for everyone asks the same questions, as far as like leadership or what things have you done for volunteer. I used to do the mock interviews for other
Yes.
kids in rural Nebraska. I was at Box Butte General Hospital. It's a very small rural hospital,
Oh.
and they had a health professions club. And so these kids were all trying to get into colleges and professional schools, and I would sit them down and would just grill them and ask some of those questions. But what things set you apart? And I said before, those interviews, like once you get that interview, like your foot's in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
you're on the same playing field as everybody else. I mean, maybe they went to Harvard or Yale. Like, doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
you're at the same interview. And so what makes you different? And so that's where you get to shine. Talk about yourself, leadership activities that you've partaken in, your family. Just they want to know about you. I mean, everyone gets good grades, right? That's what it's about. That's important. But the interview is where you get to talk about the rest of you. And that matters just as much.
And forming that personal connection, which we've already talked about, is so important. And if you haven't practiced that by volunteering in difficult situations or giving your time back as a coach for a T-ball team, if you haven't practiced that in your life, faking that during an interview becomes
Yeah.
very,
Oh,
very
they can
difficult,
tell.
right?
They can tell.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Let me ask you a final question before we wrap up. You have said that we are facing two converging crises here, at least in the United States of America, a mental health epidemic, which we've talked about a little bit, and a decline in purpose, which is so important to me in medicine to talk about purpose. Tell us why these two things are connected.
Yeah. So you talk about like that purpose, that why, like
Mm-hmm.
what drives you. If you are in healthcare because your mommy and daddy want you to be in healthcare, it's not going to be a fun ride for you, okay? Because it is brutal, it's emotionally taxing. If you go into healthcare because you generally want to help people, or maybe you're just the math and science nerd and you just love the curiosity and like solving problems, and great, because the world needs you
Right.
desperately. And it'll open doors for you that you never knew existed. For me, with the military, with special operations, working overseas, Australia, New Zealand, Rwanda. I've been all kinds of crazy places and I've loved every second of it. Healthcare was opened that doorway for me. I grew up in a rural town, Alliance, Nebraska. My dad's a railroader. My grandfather was a railroader, and my great grandfather. So I literally
Wow.
was the first McConkey to go to college. So for me, my future was joining the railroad and living in Alliance, Nebraska the rest of my life, which it's a great town, but I could not be contained. And for me, healthcare was that doorway to all kinds of amazing things in the world. So what is your why? Why are you wanting to do that? And then as an emergency physician, as a military commander as well, you just see the younger generation that really struggles with resiliency and the mental health issues, a lot of anxiety, depression, and suicide. And there's some policy decisions, a few years ago that really brought that to a head when you shut out an entire generation from school and church and their communities. Boy, they already lived on screens and iPads and iPhones anyway, so there was already some communication barriers there. But we've got a lot of work to do. So the more people get involved with this younger generation now, it's got to be face to face, not screens. Okay, get out
Absolutely.
there, and that's how we get through this crisis. Because we need everybody to be successful. Like that's the future of the country. I've been in medicine for 20 some years. I need to retire here in 10, 15 years. I got to hand the keys to you out there. All right. And I need you to be ready and have those leadership skills. So, that's what we're all about.
And that is why we do what we do, Dr. McConkey. Thank you so much for taking the time with us, for sharing your story, for really just giving an incredible motivational talk today. I really appreciate it.
A lot of fun.